chilling tales for dark nights.
Want to make sure you never miss a Chilling Tales for Dark Nights video again? Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to turn on notifications.
I looked down at my compass, which was shifting steadily between north and west, seemingly unable to decide which direction I was facing. Through the trees, I could see the sun was setting, but was unable to pinpoint where it was dipping below the horizon, due to the forest canopy and a storm I could see rolling in over the hills. This was the moment I knew I was fucked. I'd gone too far off the trail. My compass wasn't working for some reason. I couldn't navigate by the sun, and even if I could, it was rapidly vanishing, and lightning started to streak across the sky. I thought I knew the score, that I was prepared, that nothing bad could happen to me. I know now, though, that in the wilderness, the score is not something you can ever really know. I really hate when you do this, Nate. I could hear my wife's voice in my head as I slid the compass back into my pocket and leaned against a tree. I needed to think of what to do next, but all I could hear was her voice. I hate it when you go hiking by yourself. I'll be fine, Marie, I promise, I told her, so sure of myself. So damn sure. I've done these hikes 100 times and I always come back. What if you get hurt or lost or a bear attacks you? She gripped my arm and shook me, an uneasy smile on her face to show she was joking about the bear, but not really. I swear to you, I'll be okay. I pulled her in and hugged her. I felt her hands grip my back as she pressed her face into my chest, like it might be the last time. I just need to get away for the day, clear my head. I kissed the top of her head and ran my hands through her hair. Can't you clear your head at a golf course? She spoke softly into my shirt. You know I hate that shit. Besides, I look terrible in those plaid pants. We both laughed a bit, and she ended hers with a sigh. She wouldn't stop me. She never did. Have fun with your girlfriends tomorrow. I'll be home in time for us to grab late dinner. Promise. There I was, though, with twilight turning into night and the sound of rain pattering the trees around me. I should have been on the road to be home for that late dinner I promised, but I wasn't going to make it. A clap of thunder shook me from my memory and back to the harsh reality of my current situation. I was fucking lost. The rain was coming down harder now, and after several desperate attempts to call Marie or emergency services with the extremely weak signal on my phone, I gave up. I found shelter in a small alcove next to a pine tree, and I blocked myself in with my pack. It was starting to get cold, and I was wet, so I covered myself with pine needles and willow branches. The alcove had some that were still dry, to gain some measure of warmth. Out of curiosity, I checked my compass again, only to see it was now spinning around wildly to find north. I watched it jump back and forth between the letters, going clockwise for a second, and then changing direction on a dime and going the other way. Never, wheat, eat, sour, eat, never, eat, sour, wheat. I said the words from the old mnemonic device in my head each time it stopped on a letter before whispering to myself what I was really thinking. This is wrong. Of course it's wrong. You're lost in the woods, you idiot. My wife's voice said from somewhere deeper in my head. Some kind of magnetic field fucked with your compass, and now you're never coming home. It wasn't just that, though. It was how I got lost. I'd been in these hills hundreds of times and never had any problem with my compass. What magnetic field? Did it come from the storm? Even beyond that, there was an underlying sense of dread in the middle of my chest that came from more than the fear of being lost and alone. In fact, that was exactly the problem. I didn't feel alone at all. I grabbed the canteen from my pack and drank a little water as I stared out into the woods. Darkness had finally overtaken everything, but my eyes were adjusting enough so I could make out the shapes of the trees that surrounded me. I kept expecting to see the shine of a predator's eyes staring back at me when the lightning would bring the world into clear view for a moment, or the hulking outline of a bear's shadow getting closer. There was nothing, though. No four-legged beasties weaving between the trees on the prowl. What if there is, though? My wife's voice spoke again. What if you get attacked by a bear before you can find your way out or get rescued? I'll be fine. I answered the nagging doubt in my mind, as if it were actually my wife. I just need to make it till morning, and hopefully the storm will clear, and I can navigate by the sun. I grabbed a protein bar from my bag and took a bite, trying to convince myself of my own words. Maybe in the morning my compass would work. Never wheat, sour, wheat, never. Or at the very least, I could hike to higher ground and figure out where the trail was. I'm not sure how long I sat in my makeshift shelter, chewing on my protein bar and trying to convince myself I'd be fine. But my train of thought was broken by something I certainly didn't expect. I saw something moving toward me through the trees. The outline looked like a person, and it was so unexpected when my eyes caught it that my heart leapt into my throat. It looked like someone with a hood or a rain slicker pulled up over themselves as they walked through the trees. It made me feel uneasy. There wouldn't be anyone searching for me yet. In fact, there was no reason anyone would be out there with me at all. They drew closer and closer, and I shrunk back into my alcove, hoping I could get a better look at them before I made myself known. When they got within about 10 feet, though, they stopped dead in their tracks and just stared in my direction. The feeling of dread grew in my chest as the hooded shadow stood silently in the rain. Suddenly, the figure raised its arm toward me and clicked on a flashlight.
"What are you doing out here, son?"
I heard a gruff older man's voice from behind the flashlight. I pulled my pack out of the way and got to my feet. The man kept his flashlight trained at my face, practically blinding me. I got lost out here. My damn compass just went crazy. I shielded my eyes from the light, but didn't take any steps closer to him. "Are you a park ranger? Can you lower the flashlight, please?"
"Yep, I'm a ranger."
He laughed a little bit in a way that made me feel uneasy, but didn't lower the flashlight.
"The hills out here can mess with our compasses, especially during a storm. Damn place is full of nickel."
"Just lower the flashlight, please." I shrunk back as he stepped forward, keeping the light shining right in my eyes.
"You're damn lucky I found you, son."
He laughed again, his gruff voice gaining an octave or two as he did.
"Damn lucky."
"Sir, can you help me get back to the road?" The light seemed to get even brighter as he walked forward. "And please, can you get the light out of my eyes?" The whole world seemed to go stark white as he got within arm's length. I suddenly heard my wife's voice again, and not inside my head this time, but from the direction of the ranger. "You promised you'd be home for dinner," Marie said. "You promised me, Nate." Suddenly, the light clicked off, and the world around me was dark again. I rubbed my burning eyes and scanned the blur of shadows for the ranger, but I was once again alone. I barely even had time to process what had just happened when I turned toward the alcove, only to find that it was no longer there. It was gone, along with my pack, my water, and my food. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and flipped on the flashlight, thanking God I'd kept it off all day. The battery was nearly full. I did a full 360 looking for where I had just been, but saw only open forest and darkness all around me. My heart began to race, and my confused mind struggled to make sense of what the hell was going on. That's when the whispers began. They sounded like an old woman with a creaky voice, speaking in a language I didn't know. I tried to pinpoint where they were coming from, and as I looked around, I noticed symbols carved into the trees that hadn't been there only moments before. I felt like a terrified animal being toyed with by something that planned to make me its dinner when the fun was over. The whispers grew clearer and clearer, but came from all around me at once. "What the fuck is going on?" I shouted at the darkness, proving my utter helplessness. "What if you get attacked by a bear?" the whispering old woman responded, before the whole forest seemed to go silent, aside from the rainfall. I realized I was holding my breath, waiting for what could possibly happen next. I was unable to grasp my situation at the time, or even now, looking back at it. I was frozen in my spot and powerless. That's when I noticed the outline of something large moving slowly between the trees. It turned its head toward me, causing the shine in its eyes to catch my light. I stared into its killer's eyes for only a few seconds, long enough to know it was fixed on me now. Then it charged. I turned on my heel and tried to break into a run, but the thing was on me before I could take 2 steps. I felt something powerful strike me in the back and send me sprawling onto the wet forest floor. A sharp pain filled my body as huge claws tore through my shirt and flesh with little resistance, and warm blood poured from my wounds as I choked on my screams and pathetically attempted to crawl away. I glanced back to see the frothing mouth of a roaring grizzly standing over me. Its fur was matted and patchy, and sores seemed to be covering its face. Even while bleeding and staring into the face of that nightmare, I could hear the voice of my wife. "I told you, Nate. I told you not to go. Why don't you listen to me?" Her voice was silenced by the sound of my own screams, and the bear raked its claws over me again. I was bleeding so badly, I no longer had the energy to move. And though my wounds felt like fire, the rest of me felt like ice. I was lying face down on the forest floor, breathing in the smell of the damp earth. I closed my eyes and thought of my wife's face. I saw her crying. I saw her searching for me and finding nothing but a mauled corpse. Or worse, nothing at all. I prepared myself to feel the claws tear into my flesh again, or to feel the monster bear's jaw wrap around my skull. "I'm sorry, Marie," I whispered. And then I opened my eyes. I was no longer face down, but staring into the sky, feeling the rain pelt me in the face. My body was laid out with my arms and legs fully extended, and my jacket and shirt had been removed. Even though my skin was numb from the cold and my whole body ached, I felt something scratching against my skin, like a needle point being drug across my stomach and arms. "He's awake," I heard an old woman's voice whisper. "He's not supposed to be awake." The sound of the voice made me fight through the sluggishness of my own body and try to sit up. He was held. He should be held. A different woman's voice whispered as I caught glimpses of multiple figures retreating into the darkness. Something in a cloak snuffed out a lantern and walked backwards away from me up a tree with the most unnatural movement I'd ever seen. Confused and scared out of my mind, I started examining my body for the wounds from the bear attacks, but found something entirely different. Small symbols had been scratched into my skin. The skin around them was inflamed and burned to the touch. I could hear the women's voices whispering to each other. I could make out at least 4 different voices, but couldn't hear what they were saying. "What the hell did you do to me?" I screamed into the trees as I got to my feet like a drunk. Every limb felt weak and worthless. It was as I stood, I noticed that I was standing in the middle of a circle made of old branches, with 4 straight pieces placed like corners. Like a compass. Never wheat eat sour. Never sour wheat. "Just lay back down, Nate," I heard Marie's voice say. But not in my head. It came from the trees. "Everything is going to be fine, my love." It was followed by more whispers and hushed laughter. "Who are you? What are you doing to me?" I scratched the symbols on my skin and kicked apart the circle at my feet. The whispers hissed at my actions, and I could feel their eyes on me. Bright white lights like the ranger's flashlight darted between the trees and headed in my direction. I stumbled backwards, nearly tripping over my own feet and ending up back on the ground. I'm glad I caught myself on a nearby tree, or else I may never have got up again. "Were your dreams not pleasant, Nathan?" One of the old crones spoke as if directly in both of my ears at the same time. More cackling laughter followed, and the lights grew closer as I continued to back away. "Lay down, honey. Everything's going to be okay," I heard my wife say to me from somewhere out in the darkness.
"We'll get you back in time for a late dinner after all, kid."
The gruff ranger's voice came now. All of the voices felt fake, like they were recordings being played through a poor speaker. Behind them, I could hear the true voices, the whispers. "I want his eyes. I want to taste his blood. He's unprepared. So unprepared. How was he not held? He should have thought he was dead. He should have been paralyzed. The lights will hold him again. We shall finish preparing him." Then laughter. That horrid, hushed laughter. It was the sound of someone who found genuine joy in my suffering. The whispers were planning to prepare me and eat me? It was hard to say for sure. I didn't know why I could suddenly hear them so well, but knowing what was going on forced my legs into action. I managed to turn from the direction of the approaching lights and break into a run. I couldn't let them catch me. The one before that had tricked me into thinking it was a ranger hypnotized me somehow, trapped me in a dream state. I needed to get away. I needed to find the road. I was freezing cold and aching, but the pain and adrenaline kept me from keeling over and drove me forward. I stole a glance over my shoulder and saw the lights weaving through the trees after me. They had gained too much ground. "You need to run," my wife screamed from the back of my mind. "Nathan, you need to run like you've never run before." "Just lay down, and it will all be over soon." "Just lay down, and it will all be over soon." Something mimicking my wife's voice echoed through the trees. The tone all wrong, and the pitch just off. Just lay down, Nathan, and let me take care of you. I pushed myself faster, making my lungs burn. My skin felt like ice, aside from where the symbols had been scratched into me. Those burned and throbbed like much deeper wounds. I could feel the lights behind me. They were close enough to light trees ahead of me. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. Out of the corner of my eyes, I could see them getting next to me, dodging through the trees with uncanny speed. There was no false ranger attached to them this time. There were nothing but lights, floating a few feet off the ground. They were flanking me and pulling ahead. Soon I'd be trapped back in whatever nightmare they wanted, as the whispers crawled from their trees and prepared to butcher me. I needed to get away. Ahead of me was thick underbrush, and there was no way to go but through. I lowered my shoulder and closed my eyes as the lights pushed their way further into my cone of vision and started whiting the world out. I felt my body crash into a thick wall of brambles and branches. I kept my eyes shut tight as I pushed through and feeling thorns dig into my skin. Keep going. You have to keep going, Nate. Marie spoke calmly in my head now, soothing me. I grit my teeth and ran forward, feeling fresh blood trickle down my skin. I could see the brightness of the lights through my eyelids. The things were still close. I screamed out as I pulled myself through. Half naked, bleeding, soaked to the bone, and filled with primal terror, I finally pushed through to the other side of the underbrush and briefly opened my eyes to get my bearings. I was back on the trail. I had a moment of happiness before the lights emerged through the thorns and came straight for me. I shielded my eyes and turned to run down the trail. I could see the glow pulsing behind me, and as I ran, I could feel the blood, rain, and sweat streaking my skin. At the edges of the trail, I could see the cloaked figures fading into darkness as the light approached them. They always managed to keep out of sight, but I could hear their whispers. You can't leave us, Nathan. Nothing can ever leave us. We will be with you always. And one day, you will be with us always. Rasping laughter with manic undertones filled my ears as the bottom of the trail and my truck came into sight. I howled with laughter and pushed my legs harder. My chest hurt, and the scratches covering my body burned. But I was almost there. I was almost safe. Without breaking stride, I fished my keys from my pocket, and thanked God I hadn't left them in my bag or my jacket. I fumbled with the door lock for a moment as the lights grew intense in my peripheral vision. I got into the truck and slammed the keys into the ignition with a howl of victory. But before I could turn the key, one of the lights whipped around the front of the truck and hovered just above the hood. It pulsed and radiated with a white-hot light that burned my eyes. Sleep, Nathan, whispered the false Marie. Drive, Nathan, screamed the Marie inside my head. I turned the key and shut my eyes tight as the engine roared to life. I growled through my teeth while trying to keep hold of my mind as I slammed my foot on the gas and the tires spun to life, sending me hurtling down the trail and back toward the road. I opened my eyes to avoid crashing and ending up right back in the nightmare I just escaped, and saw the lights vanishing in my rear view. I made it home just as the sun was coming up and turning the sky a light gray from behind the clouds. I changed into some fresh clothes that I kept in my truck before going into the house and facing Marie. I collapsed in my wife's arms and was unable to even come up with an explanation as to what happened to me until I slept for hours. Eventually, I told her I'd fallen down a hill and through some thorn bushes, losing my pack and gear, and ended up out cold for hours. I didn't know how to tell her the truth without sounding crazy. I readily agreed never to go on a solo hike again when she inevitably asked. Sometimes I wake up screaming. I have dreams about the lights chasing me and hear the whispers asking me to come back, telling me they're always with me. They tell me other things too. They tell me I never got out, that I'm lying broken on the forest floor at their mercy. They tell me that my blood tastes like copper and fear. They tell me that my wife is not my wife, that my house is not real, and that my world is all their design. Sometimes I wake up with dirt on my feet, or feel random pains in my body. I hear them laugh at me in the moments where I'm weakest. Earlier today, Marie called me from the other room, and her voice sounded far away, like she was speaking through static. And the whispers laughed. They are always laughing.
Chilling tales for dark nights.